Hello! Surprise, surprise! I'm still figuring out how to open up the podcast episode, but hi, my name's Liv and I am back on Your Gift podcast. This is the second episode, and today I want to talk about confidently awkward stories. So, if you watched the first episode or listened to it, you already know what my passion is. If you haven't listened to the first episode yet, I highly encourage you to go back and listen to the first episode to learn a little bit more about me and my background and what this podcast is going to be about. So, my passion, to sum it up, is to help entrepreneurs become better storytellers and have more confidence with public speaking skills to help them become a selling machine. I've had so many experiences with selling products, services, but in the beginning I sucked. I made so many mistakes. I had so many embarrassing moments on stage, and I just wanted to quickly share 3 tips on how to become a better storyteller / public speaker. And the reason why I named this episode Confidently Awkward Stories is because, first of all, a little tip: if you group things into 3 items or 3 topics, it becomes much easier for people to remember them. So instead of just naming a bunch of stuff like I will help you become a better storyteller by dressing nicely, smiling more, moving around more, and making eye contact, people are not going to remember it. So I just wanted to come up with a creative title, Confidently Awkward Stories, because I'm going to quickly talk about how to sound more confident, how to look more confident, and how to come across as a little bit of awkward. If you show off your awkward side, there's nothing wrong with that. At least from my experiences, there's nothing wrong with rocking your awkwardness, because I am covered and dripping in awkwardness. And the last one is stories, because as you guys are most likely aware, storytelling is very important. So let's dive in. Intro music, cue. Probably not in the Facebook Live because I have no idea how to do all the fancy tech stuff. But when I'm going to extract the audio from the Facebook video and turn it into a podcast audio, I found a way to insert cool sound effects and music and stuff. So yeah, it'll be cool. All right, let's dive in. So confidence. I'm going to quickly talk about the confidence and what I've learned from my experiences. First of all, I'm sure you guys are aware, body language is powerful, and how you stand, how you walk around on stage is very important. First of all, let me show you an example, and this is going to be easier for those of you who's listening to the Facebook Live video to kind of see how I'm acting, whether I look more confident or not. And for those of you who will be listening to the podcast audio, I'll give another example. But let's say if you're on stage and as you're giving a speech, your body's all crumpled up, and you just that makes you seem small. I want you to think about that little lizard. I forgot its name, but that little dinosaur lizard thing, when it feels threatened, it just pops that big umbrella thingy out, so it makes itself look big. We as humans, we can do the same thing. If we can make ourselves look bigger, and thus making us look and sound more confident. So whenever I'm on stage, I never make myself look small like this. I never stand like this. I don't stay in one place. I tend to walk around, kind of show where my territory is on stage. Basically, I'm making a statement. I'm walking over here because this side of the stage is mine. I'm walking back here because this side of the stage is also mine. That's right, my territory. I'm marking my territory. And I use a lot of gestures, as you can probably tell by now. I use a lot of big arm gestures, and even though that should be limited, it should be limited to what you're talking about. You don't want to overuse your arms in motion, but when you want to emphasize a point, you make a point with your motion, and that makes people want to pay attention more. And it's funny, psychologically, when I make a motion like this, no matter what I'm talking about, people immediately look to my hand. So whenever I'm making a point about, first you do this, second you do that, people tend to look both ways. And personal experiences, when you do this, people tend to remember it more. And when it comes to confidence, your voice and what you say in the beginning of your speech matters a lot. Your voice matters so much. You have to project more all the common sense of public speaking. You can't be whispering like how I was in the beginning at McDonald's when I was struggling to order ice cream. If you haven't listened to the story, go back to the first video and listen to it, even though it's a little long. So I was too shy to order things at a restaurant, and I was whispering everything. So that doesn't really make you sound confident at all. You have to project, but I really believe that you have to have your own voice too. For example, I've always been soft-spoken, and in the past, even though I finally went through puberty, I had a very high-pitched voice. So when I was doing full-time acting, I was always struggling to project. That was all my director that I've worked with has ever said to me. Just project, Olivia, you're the main character and you're the quietest one. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Time has changed. You don't have to yell. You don't have to yell to your audience or whoever's listening, because we got this little device now. We have a very professional microphone. I mean, not very professional in my case yet, but use the technology. You don't have to lose your voice. I've done speeches over speeches on a consistent basis, daily for almost a week for a business conference and training this one time, few years back. And that's back when I was on stage without a microphone. Sometimes the mic didn't even work. Sometimes I was just left there to talk to I think it was 150 to 200 people. I had to project. And I realized that after I tend to use my throat a lot when I talk, even though some people have this amazing talent to talk with their stomach. I have no idea how. That would be amazing. But I tend to talk a lot with my throat. That sounds funny. And I'm also soft-spoken at the same time. And when I was projecting that entire week, I realized that I was starting to lose my voice. I was starting to cough a lot. I was requiring a lot of water during my speeches, which leads me to wanting to go to the bathroom more often. And that's awful when you have to give a speech after the person who's on stage now, and all I can think about is, I have to pee, and my turn is coming up soon. So what I have figured out is to just use the technology, use a microphone. You don't have to yell now on stage. You can just use your regular, normal talking voice as long as you have the right equipment. And if you are in a situation where you have to projectile, use your projectile talking voice skills, I would practice. So there are these activities that I had to do daily when I was doing full-time acting. And it's practicing to breathe with your stomach, as I mentioned before. It's difficult for me to do. It might be because when I'm on stage, I tend to be in suits and tight dresses, and I don't want my stomach to show. Maybe that's why I try not to use my stomach so much. But what a lot of my fellow actor friends did was they would just practice breathing in and out with their stomach, so that and apparently that helps with projecting your voice more. Now I'm going into a subject where I don't know much about because I don't practice it, but there are a lot of different ways to project your voice without sounding like you're yelling at your audience. But I would say my best advice is to use the technology. If you're on a big stage with a lot of people in the audience, you have to have a mic. there's no way for you to reach all those thousands of people. For example, when I was emceeing for the concert with like 5,000 people in the stage, there's no way all those 5,000 people and the people all the way back in the stage to be able to hear me without the proper equipment. So I would say use your equipment, and I can later go more in detail into just like projecting on stage with my acting experiences. And secondly, there's nothing wrong with being awkward on stage. For example, one more point. Okay, I don't have a script ready for today because I wanted to kind of like wing it and go with the flow, as I'm keeping my promise of making one podcast a day, which is why this explains my look of just having no makeup on, in my PJ, and, in my glasses. Anyways, another important thing with confidence, you never want to say, I'm sorry. You never want to apologize to your audience. You don't want to say, oops, I forgot. Or, I'm sorry, I don't know what I was going to say next. Or something along that line. You never want to apologize to your audience. And I used to make this mistake so many times in the past. And every time I asked my mentor after the speech, like how it went, majority of the times, like probably 98% of the times, the answer would be like, we didn't even know what mistake you made or what line you forgot until you made it known to the audience that you did. So all the people in the audience don't really know what you're going to say. And even if you're using a PowerPoint slides, they're not 100% sure what you were planning on saying next. So let's say if you forgot what you were going to say about the entire slide that's being presented right now, you could just say a couple of words and just like move on instead of saying, I'm sorry, I forgot. Because reminding the audience that you made a mistake or you forgot kind of gives them an impression that, okay, that speaker forgot what he or she's going to say, and that really, decreases his or her credibility as a speaker. And I've noticed this whenever my students gave a speech, and every time they apologize, I'd be like, okay, like, before you mentioned that, I had no idea what you made a mistake on. And even after they apologize, I'm just like, what did they mess up on? So the more you tell them about the mistake you made, it's so unnecessary. So yeah, that's the last part that I wanted to cover when it comes to confidence and being awkward. I'm sure no one ever told you to be awkward on stage, and I'm not talking about just straight up have an awkward silence for 5 minutes straight or nothing like that. But what I noticed from experience and listening to other people on stage is that there's nothing wrong with ums and likes, and there's nothing wrong with silent breaks or awkward silences. And that's because I'm saying ums and likes, and that's probably because I'm still getting adjusted to this weird environment of me looking at myself through the camera lens and recording myself talk, because I never had to re-listen to my speech or whatever I say after it's been recorded. It was always just like live, MC the concert, MC the event, give a speech and be done with it. And I've always only seen like clips of the videos after people like send it to me. But it's okay to make things awkward on stage, because first of all, when you are given a speech that's perfect, there's no in between awkward silences. It just sounds like you memorize the whole thing and you're giving this perfect monologue or whatever you're talking about. People have shorter attention span. Did you know that goldfish has an attention span of, I think, 8 seconds, and humans have an attention span of 7 seconds? So we literally have, or majority of us, have an attention span that's shorter than a goldfish. So if you're giving a speech for more than like 18, 20 minutes, people are bound to just wander off mentally. Maybe they're going to daydream. What am I going to eat later? And that tends to happen. I experienced this as an audience member. I noticed this in the audience member while I was giving a speech. When everything is going so smoothly and perfectly, people tend to just like drift off, especially if it's like a presentation on a topic they're not very familiar with. But if you give a little bit of an awkward speech, that not only adds emotion to the speech, but it also brings the people back in. So I highly believe that giving an awkward silence in between really helps bring the audience like back into grabbing their attention. So for example, if I were to be like, so for breakfast I had ham, egg, and bacon sandwich, and it was the most perfect breakfast ever, and I had a cup of coffee, and I had a little bit of sugar and milk in it, and it tasted so good. Versus, so for breakfast this morning, I had this wonderful ham, egg, and bacon sandwich. And I also had a cup of coffee, which had a little bit of sugar and milk in it. What did you guys have for breakfast this morning? So what it does is, I don't know if you noticed, and I don't know if that was a good example. I'll try to come up with a better example next time. But I don't know if you noticed, but when there are like these awkward silences, if you're like me, when things are silent, you just immediately, the awkward cells in your body are just like, it's awkward, I have to pay attention, what's going on? So when there are those awkward pauses, people tend to just be like, what's going on? Versus if everything's flowing perfectly, it's just like, okay, she's talking again, okay, it's about her breakfast, awesome, great speech. So that's what I noticed. I hope that makes sense, and I'll try to go into more detail about that with the example that I use in a real speech later. And imperfections are okay. So ums and likes, I noticed as an audience member, one of my business mentors, he tends to use ums and likes pretty frequently. And it got to a point where I thought of making a compilation video of him just saying ums and likes over and over again. And I'm sure the video would have been like much longer than I would anticipate it to be. So what I'm trying to say is ums and likes are perfectly okay, because it kind of has that similar effect of when someone is given a speech and they throw in a that kind of like makes you feel a little alert. And compared to when everything's flowing smoothly, when you hear that ums and likes that we're just drilled into our head not to use during a public speech, it makes you feel immediately awkward, and you're just like, okay, what's going on? I have to listen. When is this going to be over? And what I realize is that it not only shows that, okay, he's imperfect, like he's human just like me. Oh my gosh, I look up to him so much more because we have more things in common now. And but also it adds that effects where it helps me pay attention more. And lastly, storytelling is so important when it comes to public speaking. It helps people easily understand what you're talking about. You have to be able to make a comparison and throw in a story, and I highly recommend using your own stories. But if it's in a niche or a topic that you're not familiar with, I would use other people's stories or talk to someone else who's an expert or who has more experiences in the field and use it in your speech. So instead of, don't lie about it, don't say, oh, from my experience, blah, 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 blah. It makes it engaging sometimes to just say, okay, my close friend, blah, 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 had this experience in the subject and blah, 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 this happened. That helps people who might be more familiar with the subject be able to relate to it more. And when it comes to storytelling, it again brings people right back in. If you're talking about drinking water and how important it is, you don't want to just throw facts and be like, scientists say like something percent of the people die of dehydration, blah, 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 blah. You want to be able to also throw in your experiences and be like, this one time I didn't want to go pee during a marathon, so I refused to drink a bottle of water. But it got to a point where I was so dehydrated and I fainted before I came to an end. Wow, I'm coming up with such great examples today, right? But if you realize during, let's say, a professor's lecture, if you're ever in class and your professor just throws an experience, like real life experiences, that really helps you understand the subject matter more easily, and you're able to visualize it more easily as well. Personally, I'm a visual learner, and hearing an example or seeing an example really helps me go, aha, okay, I get it now. So I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to structure these daily podcasts and kind of share my experiences and secrets when it comes to storytelling, being on stage, giving a speech, and my love for public speaking. And I think I'm going to share maybe one secret a day or 3 secrets a day and kind of like go more in depth with it. Today, I just wanted to cover 3 topics that most of you are probably familiar with, but I wanted to keep up with my word and publish an episode a day. So I hope you're able to find this helpful, and if you want more like real life examples of each of the points that I made today, or if you have any requests or feedback or questions, feel free to send me a voicemail on Anchor, as well as commenting down below or messaging me, reaching out to me on social media. So, all right, I have no idea how long I talked for today, but yay, 2nd episode of the podcast. And I realized something cool today. I was seeing a bunch of May the Force Be With You memes yesterday, and it was like right after I published or launched the podcast, Your Gift Podcast, and I was like, I don't get it. Like, why are people celebrating the 4th of May? Like, are they celebrating 4th of July early this year because of the pandemic? And then my student, I was asking him today too, I teach a class online, and he said, oh my gosh, Liv, you don't get it? I was like, no, I don't get it. It's a line from Star Wars. I was like, yeah, I know that. Yoda said that. And he was like, no, like, may the force be with you. Like, 4th of May, like the month. And I was like, oh my gosh, may the force be with you. I get it now. And I thought it was really cool because May the Force is when I launch Your Gift Podcast. So, may the Force be with you yesterday. All right, so today was a little bit of a quick secret sharing or knowledge sharing, experience sharing, and a little bit of a rant. I'm figuring this out as I go. Hopefully, by the 300th episode, I'll have a better idea of how to podcast better. But I'm glad that this is just the 2nd episode and 0 people are listening right now. Not even my mom, because I didn't tell her about it. Alright, maybe she'll probably be watching in the future. But alright, that was the end of the 2nd episode. And my name's Liv, and you're listening to Your Gift Podcast. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.